You struck Earth first, and thought we were weak. But every system you rely on already answers to us. Humanity is coming for you, whether you realize it or not. They called it a compliance test, not a war. That was the first lie the Empire told itself. Earth sat on the edge of mapped space, catalogued as loud, divided, ambitious, and ultimately harmless. A species still arguing over borders, still burning fossil fuels on one hemisphere while launching satellites from another. Useful someday, maybe. Dangerous never. When the Empire's doctrine demanded a demonstration, one decisive strike to remind the frontier what obedience looked like, Earth was selected because it was convenient. The strike was precise. Orbital platforms erased in minutes. Defense grids neutralized before they finished cycling online. Communications fractured into isolated pockets of static. The Empire did not glass cities or poison oceans. That would have been wasteful. The goal was fear, not extinction. Break their confidence, mark them as compliant, move on. Galactic observers watched the feeds with mild interest. Some species flinched in sympathy. Others barely looked up. Everyone understood the ritual. A young species tests itself against authority. Authority answers. Order is preserved. Humanity did not answer. That absence was noted. Analysts expected retaliation, even if symbolic. A missile launched blindly. A broadcast filled with defiance. Something emotional. Instead, Earth went quiet. No fleet mobilization. No counterstrike. No grand speech sent into the void. The only transmissions that leaked out were distress signals, evacuation notices, requests for medical aid routed through neutral channels. Within days, the Empire declared the test successful. Earth had failed. The classification followed automatically: non-resistant, non-threatening, candidate for future integration once population stability returned. Galactic media summarized it more bluntly. Humanity had folded. On Earth, the damage was real. Orbital debris rained like artificial meteors. Power grids collapsed in chains. Ports burned. Millions were displaced. Governments argued, then stopped arguing when arguing proved slower than survival. Emergency councils replaced parliaments. Rationing replaced markets. Engineers slept on concrete floors beside machines that could not afford downtime. What humanity did not do was surrender. There was no formal capitulation, no signed admission of inferiority. There was also no attempt at heroics. No desperate charge against impossible odds. The public never saw a general pounding a table and promising vengeance. They saw supply schedules, repair timetables, lists of what still worked and what could be salvaged. Behind closed doors, the truth was simpler and colder. Earth could not win a war like the Empire's wars. Humanity had known that for a long time. They had known it when they first mapped alien trade routes instead of alien fleets. They had known it when they invested in cargo tonnage instead of dreadnought hulls. They had known it every time a human engineer took a contract on a foreign station because it paid better than staying home. So when the Empire struck, humanity did not reach for weapons it did not have. It reached for systems it did. The woman who would later stand before the tribunal was not introduced to the public as a savior. At the time, most people did not know her name at all. She had never commanded a fleet in battle. Her uniform, when she wore one, carried no decorations meant for parades. Her expertise was logistics, how long something lasted, where it came from, and what happened when it stopped arriving. While the Empire congratulated itself, Earth stabilized. Supply lines rerouted internally. Manufacturing shifted priorities without ceremony. Human colonies off-world were instructed to continue operations exactly as before. No alerts. No declarations. Business as usual was not an act of denial, it was camouflage. The summons arrived a month later. The Imperial Tribunal requested Earth's representatives to attend proceedings regarding planetary status and future oversight. The wording was polite. The intent was not. Everyone understood what the tribunal was meant to do. It formalized reality. It put a seal on outcomes already decided. Some advisors argued Earth should refuse. Others demanded a dramatic appearance, something that would at least restore pride if nothing else. The woman listened, said little, and eventually spoke only once. They will underestimate us more in person than they ever could from orbit. Earth accepted. The journey to the tribunal took weeks. Long enough for alien analysts to reinforce their conclusions. Humans were fractured. Humans were emotional. Humans lacked strategic foresight. Their industries were impressive but unfocused. Their militaries brave but obsolete. The Empire had faced species with sharper teeth and heavier guns. Humanity would adapt, eventually, under guidance. No one asked where half the Empire's replacement parts were manufactured. No one wondered why human shipping companies operated in nearly every neutral system. No one questioned how often Imperial fleets relied on civilian contractors for fuel refinement, food synthesis, medical supplies, and hyperspace navigation updates. Those things were invisible by design. When Earth's delegation arrived, there were no escorts of warships, no displays of defiance. Just a small group, deliberately unremarkable. The woman walked at the front, posture calm, expression unreadable. To the watching chambers, she looked like a formality before the inevitable. That misjudgment was the second lie. The first had been believing the strike was enough. Humanity had not survived because it was strong. It had survived because it was patient. Because it learned early that strength attracted challenges, while usefulness attracted dependence. Because it understood that the most dangerous position in any system was not at the top, but everywhere underneath it, holding everything else up. By the time the tribunal convened, Earth was no longer bleeding. It was waiting. The Imperial Tribunal was not built to hear pleas. It was built to witness conclusions. The chamber curved outward in lead T's, each seat occupied by representatives of species that had learned, one way or another, how the galaxy worked. Some wore ceremonial armor. Others hid behind translators and artificial gravity fields tuned to their comfort. Above them all hovered the sigil of the Empire, ancient, unchanging, confident in its permanence. Earth's delegation stood alone at the center. No chains. No guards. No dramatic restraints. The Empire did not bind those it considered already defeated. The presiding adjudicator began reciting the record. Earth had resisted initial contact protocols. Earth had failed to deter a compliance strike. Earth's defenses had been neutralized within acceptable margins. The outcome was clear. Oversight, resource auditing, cultural correction. The words were smooth, rehearsed, bored. When asked to respond, the human delegation deferred to a single figure. The woman stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. She did not bow. She did not posture. Her uniform was plain, unadorned by medals meant to impress alien eyes. To many in the chamber, she looked like a clock mistakenly allowed onto a battlefield stage. Some laughed openly. The adjudicator asked her to state Earth's position. Surrender terms, concessions, final statements for the record. The usual formalities before the seal was applied. She surprised them by agreeing. Earth had lost the engagement. Earth's defenses had been inadequate. Earth had never developed weapons capable of challenging Imperial fleets directly. The laughter grew louder. A conquered species admitting inferiority always pleased the room. Then she added, calmly, that this was not an oversight. She explained that Earth had studied the Empire long before the first strike. Studied its victories. Studied the wreckage left behind. Studied how every conquest followed the same pattern: overwhelming force, symbolic resistance, then assimilation into a centralized system that demanded obedience but outsourced maintenance. Humans, she said, were very good at noticing patterns. The adjudicator interrupted, reminding her that philosophical observations were irrelevant. The tribunal was not a classroom. She nodded and switched to records. Not arguments. Records. She requested permission to submit logistical data into the chamber archive. Shipping manifests. Contract registries. Infrastructure maintenance schedules. Trade arbitration rulings. The request was granted out of mild curiosity. It was harmless information. Boring information. As the data unfolded, the chamber quieted, not because of fear, but confusion. Fuel depots across Imperial space were flagged. Their maintenance contracts traced back to shell corporations registered in neutral systems. Those corporations traced back further, layer by layer, until the pattern became difficult to ignore. Human involvement appeared again. And again. And again. Food synthesis facilities supplying frontier fleets. Human-designed. Medical equipment standardized across conquered worlds. Human patents. Navigation software updated quarterly. Human engineers. Insurance frameworks underwriting interstellar trade. Human legal models. The adjudicator objected, stating that none of this constituted military capability. The woman agreed. Then she explained that military capability was never the point. She spoke of superweapons with almost dismissive indifference. Weapons broke things. They invited escalation. They created enemies who remembered. Humanity had decided early that if it ever faced something larger than itself, it would not try to hit harder. It would make itself necessary. She described how humans offered help without demanding loyalty. How they underbid competitors, accepted thinner margins, embedded themselves quietly into systems no one else wanted to manage. Supply chains. Repair crews. Emergency logistics. The unglamorous arteries of civilization. The Empire, she said, had been happy to let them. Why would an emperor concern himself with who refueled his fleets, as long as the fleets kept moving? Why question who maintained the ports, as long as tribute arrived on time? Why notice the hands beneath the throne, as long as the throne did not shake? A murmur spread through the chamber. The adjudicator demanded clarity. Was Earth issuing a threat? The woman shook her head. She said threats required force, and Earth did not believe in wasting force. Earth believed in leverage. In patience. In understanding what happened when a system was stressed not by attack, but by absence. She paused then, allowing the silence to stretch just long enough to become uncomfortable. You struck Earth first, she said, her voice steady, unraised. Now humanity is coming for you. Some laughed again, but fewer this time. The words were too calm, too certain. The adjudicator declared the statement noted and moved to conclude proceedings. Earth's status would be formalized. Oversight teams would be dispatched. Compliance would be ensured. As the sigil above them pulsed, alerts began arriving, not alarms, just notifications. Delays. Scheduling conflicts. Maintenance holds. A refueling station on the outer rim had shut down unexpectedly. A fleet reported rationing issues. A medical shipment missed its window due to contractual review. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they formed a question the Empire had never practiced answering. The woman stepped back into line without waiting for dismissal. Her part was finished. She had not argued for mercy. She had not begged for survival. She had not lied. She had simply reminded the Empire of something it had forgotten. You do not notice the foundation until it stops holding you up. By the time the tribunal adjourned, Earth was no longer the subject of the conversation. It was the context. The Empire's confidence was a brittle shell, and it began to crack quietly, imperceptibly, almost politely. Reports arrived first. A supply convoy never reached its destination. A repair crew refused to follow a fleet's orders. A refinery delayed production citing compliance review. Alone, each incident was trivial. Together, they formed a pattern no one had anticipated. Commanders assumed error. Human sabotage, perhaps. Or localized rebellion. They dispatched inspectors. Every inspection returned the same answer. Humans were everywhere, working in plain sight, following contracts, maintaining systems, yet refusing direct obedience. Nothing illegal. Nothing violent. Nothing traceable. The woman general's words replayed in the chambers. Calm, unflinching. You struck Earth first, now humanity is coming for you. At first, Empire analysts dismissed it as bravado. Humans lacked fleets, lacked superweapons, lacked decisive power. Then data contradicted assumption. Logistics nodes across the Empire were human-managed. Food, fuel, medical supplies, navigation software, all handled by human agencies and subsidiaries embedded in every occupied system. Without them, fleets stalled. Ships ran dry. Colonies could not function autonomously. Panic was quiet at first. Senior officers called meetings, issued orders, tried to reassert control. Each command returned irregularities. A key hyperspace route showed discrepancies in traffic logs. Fuel shipments arrived late or not at all. Communications systems glitched only for Imperial channels. Every contingency had a hidden dependency, human. Every dependency traced back to Earth. The tribunal reconvened in confusion. Conquered species, previously silent witnesses, began whispering among themselves. They had relied on human contracts for decades. Human systems were efficient, reliable, embedded. Now that the Empire questioned them, these species openly resisted orders. They refused to operate beyond Earth-sanctioned instructions. A ripple turned into a wave. By the time the Empire realized the scale, it was too late. Their fleets, once instruments of terror, were now vulnerable. Hyperlane maps depended on human oversight. Repairs, resupply, fuel, even maintenance of life support systems, all indirect extensions of a species they had mocked. Ships could not move. Colonies faltered. Orders were ignored. Entire sectors paused. The woman general did not raise her voice. She did not command troops. She did not give speeches filled with fire and blood. She had only reminded them of one truth: humanity thrives in the spaces no one thinks to check. The Empire, so used to domination, found its authority evaporating without a shot fired. Panic became a slow, creeping understanding. Every system they relied on answered not to imperial law, but to human contracts, human priorities, human patience. Every calculation of advantage they had made for centuries dissolved quietly. Observers across the galaxy began to see the same truth. Humans were not weapons in the traditional sense. Humans did not conquer by firepower, fleets, or fear. They conquered by embedding themselves into the foundations. By mastering the invisible, mundane, essential. By making themselves impossible to replace, impossible to ignore, impossible to defeat without collapsing the structure of the galaxy itself. The Empire sought retaliation, but every effort faltered. Ships lacked fuel. Fleets could not coordinate. Communication grids failed. Colonies under Imperial rule refused orders. Every desperate strike revealed another dependency, another oversight, another system quietly controlled by humanity. By the time the Outer Rim reported full compliance with Earth's new directives, the Empire understood the final, unavoidable truth. They had attacked what they thought was a weak, isolated planet. They had misjudged an entire species. They had created a threat not by action, but by arrogance. Humanity had not arrived to destroy. Humanity had already arrived. And in every port, every trade hub, every ship, and every colony, it was quietly, perfectly, undeniably in control. The woman general said nothing more. Her warning had been fulfilled. The Empire felt it not as a battle, not as defeat, but as the quiet, suffocating weight of inevitability. Humanity did not need fleets to arrive. It was already present in every critical node of the Empire. Every route, every station, every refueling hub, every data relay operated under human oversight, quietly maintained, silently dependable. The Empire's arrogance had blinded it to the infrastructure it relied on, the hands it ignored, the contracts it took for granted. When Earth's presence became undeniable, it did not manifest as fire or destruction. It manifested as control. Imperceptible at first, subtle adjustments spread outward, supply chains reallocated, shipping schedules rerouted, maintenance prioritized by human discretion. Occupied worlds found themselves cooperating with humans of their own volition. Colonies previously oppressed now requested guidance. Fleets unable to operate autonomously were effectively paused, waiting on human approval. The woman general addressed the Empire one final time. Her voice remained calm, unraised, authoritative not because of power projected, but power understood. She outlined Earth's terms: trade, oversight, integration, but not annihilation. She offered structure, stability, and fairness, replacing fear with reliance. The Empire, accustomed to coercion, found its authority hollow. Orders were ignored, commands faltered, fleets stalled. Resistance melted away under quiet inevitability rather than brute force. Alien observers, once confident in imperial supremacy, watched their leaders struggle. Commands failed to propagate. Systems failed to respond. Supply lines depended entirely on Earth. The Empire realized, too late, that it had built itself atop human networks. Every calculation of strength, every strategy of domination, every assumption about weakness was rendered obsolete by humanity's patient infiltration, its unassuming dominance. The galaxy understood at last. Humans did not conquer through weapons, fleets, or intimidation. Humans conquered by becoming indispensable, mastering the mundane, the overlooked, the essential. They turned patience, logistics, and foresight into instruments of power no enemy could counter without destroying themselves. In every sector, the Empire bowed, not to the threat of violence, but to the quiet inevitability of human presence. Humanity had arrived everywhere, already in control, and needed nothing more than its systems, its people, and its patience to assert supremacy. The woman general stepped back, her warning fulfilled, her species secure. The Empire had attacked first, and now it lived entirely at the mercy of the very species it had underestimated. Humanity had not conquered by striking. Humanity had conquered by existing, by weaving itself into the very framework of the galaxy, and by showing that true power often lies not in what is seen, but in what no one thought to notice.